Hi, I'm Mike Stern. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Connected.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Mike. It's really appreciated that you take the time to come speak with us and the TFE community. I want to start by just having you briefly introduce yourself and Connected, obviously, and just tell us what you guys are focused on and what keeps you busy.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as CEO of Connected, what keeps me busy is growing our business, growing our people, and keeping us all focused on our goal, which is to build better products for our clients and for their end users. What's Connected? Connected is an end-to-end product development services firm. So we specialize in helping our clients discover and then deliver software-powered products to the marketplace. We partner with a number of very ambitious product leaders across a number of different industries, building software-powered products.
As somebody and as a company that's working with some of the leading technology companies in the world and across a whole bunch of different industries, obviously, but also someone who's successfully grown Canadian companies, how would you describe Canada's entrepreneurship ecosystem? And if you could, what would you highlight as its strengths and our weaknesses in that respect?
I've seen the strengths and the weaknesses firsthand. As an entrepreneur, in a number of different startups now that I've either helped grow or that I've founded. Um, One anecdote that's relevant to Connected, is probably helpful here, which is that in 2014, when I started Connected, many of my peers at the time believed that the mission that we were about to go on was kind of inherently flawed. They said things like that our the broad category that we wanted to be in, software development services, had peaked, or more specifically, that quality software services had peaked. There's no more room to innovate. They warned that the category was becoming commoditized and moving offshore, and still others warned that we wouldn't be able to compete with the big strategy, design, and advertising firms. That like they would converge into our space faster than we could emerge into it. And I think that that resistance to uh, being more optimistic about a new vision is kind of emblematic, I think, of a weakness for the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Canada. I mean, I think it exists everywhere, but I think in Canada, there's a fear of competition from bigger companies in the US, or a fear of taking kind of contrarian bets on new markets. Often something that a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with hear from potential investors in Canada is that the total addressable market for what they're working on isn't big enough, isn't interesting enough. And so I think all of this is kind of a weakness because it overlooks one of the biggest strengths that Canadian entrepreneurs have, which is talent, and world class talent. Not just world class in the sense that the talent here can compete with talent around the world, but that the talent is worldly, uh, in that they have a worldly perspective and an ability to actually see trends and potential new markets in a way that I think is very rare and rich and deep. And so I think, inside of this weakness is actually maybe an opportunity for entrepreneurs who have unique insight about something that the world wants, and can, bring that insight into market through building new products, and leveraging, a great and diverse group of really talented people that I think can, make a real dent in a way that other countries can't.
You mentioned this sort of uniquely Canadian trait of not aiming high enough, and that you saw that within your peers in 2014 when you started Connected. With more and more Canadian unicorns emerging, and this week we saw FreshBooks being the latest ones. Do you see that attitude or that confidence shifting? Has there been any change in that respect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those examples are perfect, and it's impossible to ignore now. We have with Shopify, but also a number of other kind of newly minted unicorns, a number of examples of companies who are very explicitly tackling global markets and not just trying to be the best in Canada, but trying to be the best in the world. And those examples are so inspiring for the next generation of entrepreneurs. And it's something that I feel very fortunate to have, been a little part of, in that companies that I worked for previously, namely Extreme Labs, was led by founders who had a more global ambition, who believed that a little Canadian company could service the best technology companies in the world and really compete at a global level. And we did. And being part of that story, in my case, being part of Extreme, but in now this new generation of employees at some of the companies that you named, like the Shopify, the FreshBooks of the world, they're getting a taste for what that looks like and feels like, and being given a lot of confidence to do similar in their future endeavors. So it's very exciting.
I know that Connected recently secured an investment from the CBGF, the Canadian Business Growth Fund. What does that mean for you and Connected? And what are your thoughts now on the availability of funding for Canadian startups and SMEs?
I think maybe lack of funding was a problem 10 years ago. But I have not seen, any problem with lack of funding in Canada for some time now. I think just globally, uh, we're awash with capital, and there's no shortage of capital that wants to go into, all sorts of places. Uh, I think the problem, and I experienced this, with Connected, is that there has historically been a lack of the right kind of capital for the right company. And so, in Connected's case, we were very hesitant to take venture money or traditional private equity money for the 7 years we were in existence, because Connected's not really the kind of company that needs that kind of capital or wants that kind of capital. Connected has a very long-term view. We want to be a company that lasts for many, many years and grows in a way that's very sort of unique and kind of appropriate for our business model, for our clients, for our people. And so, what was so refreshing is learning about the CBGF team, who have an evergreen model, meaning they are minority, long term, and patient investors. Unlike most traditional private equity, uh, where you basically sell control, and within 3 to 5 years, the private equity folks want to basically flip the business, sell it to somebody else. CBGF takes a very different approach. They want to be with us for the long term, like 10 years plus. They want to take a minority position in the business, provide support, but not take over. And I think that's a very exciting development, that there's an organization like the CBGF for companies that don't follow the typical venture model or private equity model. And so what I'd say, in conclusion, is that I don't think currently there's a problem with lack of capital for entrepreneurs. I think that the problem is more that there has been kind of a one size fits all model for entrepreneurs, but that's starting to change. And CBGF is a great example.
Mike, I'd like to dive in a bit more into what you perceive or envision an ideal entrepreneur to be, and I want to ask you about the entrepreneur's DNA in terms of what that means to you, in terms of the qualities, either inherent or taught, that you think best describe a successful entrepreneur.
I think courage, risk taking, and cross disciplinary thinking define the entrepreneurial DNA to me. Of course, entrepreneurs are very diverse, and it's really hard to summarize, what defines the DNA across the board. But I think uh, having met many successful entrepreneurs, these three qualities are top of mind for me. I want to focus on the risk taking element because I think there's a kind of myth that entrepreneurs are inherently risky or risk obsessed people. Uh, I would argue that entrepreneurs are actually not big on taking risk. They're kind of obsessed with taking smart risks, and it's actually their uh, understanding of a market or an opportunity that's so deep that lets them do something that may look risky, but actually is the least risky thing they can do. This isn't my idea. This has been written about many times before, but it really comes to mind for me often, especially now that we're 7 years in. We've raised money. There's some perceived success around Connected. Often, my peers or friends will say, "Oh, that was such a risky thing to go and do," and I'm always kind of at odds with that because I remember when we started Connected that we had this really deep insight about where the market was going and the value of building new products and just this big new opportunity there that we thought doing anything else would have been risky. Doing this is actually not risky, and so that's where the courage comes in, the courage to take a contrarian, non-risky but maybe seemingly risky opportunity, and run with it. And so that's why I think courage matters a lot, especially in the early days, but certainly in the later days when you need to continue to keep pushing and focusing, instead of looking around at where the grass might be greener. And so lastly, cross-disciplinary thinking. First of all, this is something that we basically preach at Connected, which is that crossing silos and bringing diverse viewpoints and skill sets together is a really great way not only to discover new opportunities, but then to de-risk the process of bringing them to market. It's certainly something that I think matters for entrepreneurs. If you can have the kind of intellectual humility and curiosity to go beyond the confines of your education or whatever you were kind of formally taught, and look kind of outside to other places to learn, other people to work with. I think that's a really good way to discover new opportunities and then de-risk taking them to market.